Welcome to Still Talking with your host, Jacob Fortan. Tonight on the show, the Sochi Olympics. We'll be discussing that. I feel like that's too short. So let's just go. Let's just get ready. Let's just do the show. The intro doesn't work. We'll do it live. We'll fucking do it live. Welcome to the show. We are doing it live, actually. I don't know why we're still doing it live. That's a bad idea. But we're still deciding. This is the easiest way to record things. Isn't that funny?
Isn't that weird?
It is weird.
Doing a live show because it's easier.
It's easier. Yeah. Be like, fuck it. Just really do it live because at that point, you're just like, it's recording and yeah, it's easier.
So
fuck
this
it.
is episode 2, right? But it's actually our third episode.
This is going to happen multiple times. This is going to happen a lot because undoubtedly, even this show we may have to do again. Maybe we could call it episode 2.5 or something like that as an ode to B. Yeah, well, in any case, we did a show and then naturally the sound fucked up. And on audio, man, I mean, on a video, bad sound too.
It's too much.
Redo.
Do over.
So tonight on the show, we're actually going to be talking about the Sochi Olympics.
Where is Sochi?
Well, that's an interesting question. Sochi is when you're talking about Russia, first you have to understand that Russia is not just a country, okay? It's like a federation of fiefdoms, of planets, yeah. Yeah, that's right. You know, Russia must have been how the Federation started, just like these fiat states. Could you imagine? Russia is the one that brings us to like the future of Star Trek.
Interesting.
That would be interesting, you know, because they have a little federation, but their federation is not so solid. So they started with 89 and they're down to 83. So, and then you remember that whole Georgia thing way back? That was one of their little. I'm trying to remember what they're called. They have a specific weird name because in Russian it doesn't quite translate to the English version of what they are because they're not provinces, they're not states in the same respect that there are in the U.S. And culturally, geographically, all these things, they are kind of like their own little mini countries, but they're all tiny. Their populations are that big. I think that largely a lot of them didn't either survive the Second World War or many of them were genocided, for religious, ethno-religious, all the kind of fucking shit that happens all the time. All the time since the beginning of mankind's journey into civilization. The never-ending fucking fight. So yes, it's essentially, if you want to get an idea of where it is in the geography. If you're familiar with history rather than modern geography, which is what I would say I'm better at. So let's take the area which formerly Mesopotamia. So I guess, the Fertile Crescent, if you want. And if you go north of the Fertile Crescent, I think it's east or northwest. I'm not quite sure. You get to the Caucus region. So 10,000 years ago, when the ancestors of, I guess, guys like me and Mr. B here, the ancestors of the Semitic people. I mean, I don't even know. Like, Sumerians, I guess, is partially that's what Semitic means, by the way. The Sumerians. It doesn't mean Jewish. It means like from the Fertile Crescent Valley. That's a lot of fucking people. But some of those people moved over to the Caucasus region. That became kind of like the lines of Europeans and blah blah. So So a little bit less further back, we get to the Caucasians, which is what, I guess we all factor in. And that's a huge list of peoples and cultures that have different values and belief systems and ways of fucking life that's been going on for, I don't know, like a couple of millennia or, millennia or 10.
Right.
That's how far back some of these areas sort of like trace back their ancestry. Yeah, to when basically the Fertile Crescent became a desert because we farmed the shit out of it. Nice job, everybody. So then we had what was basically the Garden of Eden. You have two. The thing about Mesopotamia, all right, or I guess Iraq, Iraq, is that there are two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, and they kind of join up at one point. So all civilizations are based on these river systems, and like the Nile or the Indus Valley or the Yangtze River in China. You got to have a fucking river, big river of non-salt fucking water that's regularly floods so you can have a fucking civilization. Well, in the beginning, the cradle of mankind, they had two, man. It was like fucking Super Saiyan, you know what I mean? Like, poing, sing. So, of course, it was like the Garden of Eden. Of course, everybody just developed almost everything. You know, like every fucking domesticated animal, like from the pig to the cow or what, all of them are from that area. Like, with the exception of a few of the, you know, the domesticated animals, like the fucking camel and the llama, the lame ones. Basically, were spread from the fucking Fertile Crescent. And the reason they spread is basically because we fucked up the land. So by spreading, they just had to get the fuck out of the desert they made when they just left the area. Woof. And then that's the kind of horrible desert that, you know, America's fighting over. Hey-o. America. They're back in Mesopotamia. Can you believe that? That's crazy. History repeating itself. So now you have, okay, so essentially you have the Caucasians that move northwards, and they live in this area, and then there's a ton of history that fucking happens. Among them is in 16th century, they became Muslim, so that many of the areas around that are Muslim. Even in China, there's Chinese Muslims. Yeah, I'm just blowing your mind now. Yeah, oh my God, yeah. Yeah, there's lots of Chinese Muslims. Yeah, they're called Uyghurs or something like that. Yeah. I've eaten their food. It's heavy on the lamb and cumin and rosemary, I want to say. But yeah, they live really on the border because, you know, in certain areas of Russia, Asian and Caucasian is or whatever other people are around there. There's no distinction. They're like, there's some Mongolian over there. I mean, there was just, let's just say that the Hui. All right. I guess I only know it in a bad Chinese translation, essentially. No. The Uyghurs. I'm telling you, they have like specific food. I'll fact check in the notes, all right? It'll be in the notes, all right? I'll include it in the notes, I swear. But anyways, so this area in particular is extremely volatile, if you want. It's been volatile for a long time because many of those places, these principalities of the Federation, want out, you know, except for they have a population of 1 million. You can't have an economy. And, you know, Chechnya, the area that has a whole bunch of very fundamentalist Muslim groups that often do terrorist attacks, like in 2004, where there were two mid-sized jetliners that were exploded in the air as a fucking terrorist attack. You don't remember that because you weren't paying fucking attention back then. You didn't give a shit. It's like you give a shit now. I'm like, oh yeah, there's terror attacks in other parts of the world. And a place where there's a lot, which is really one of the towns where athletes and stuff like that are going to be, you know, living close to and probably going to, had two terrorist attacks in a very short period of time. And that's typically, they happen in twos, a lot in twos. Do you remember a while back when there was that, they kidnapped all those kids in like this building, and then they went in and like 300 kids died and stuff like that. Do you remember that incident?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the same kind of independent separatist Islamic movement that has been at this city's throat. Now, the city in particular, Volvograd, what was it again? I'm so terrible with Russian names. Formerly Stalingrad, basically. You know, the place that got like a lot of people dying block per block in the Second World War, like 1 million plus Russians or something like that. Volvograd. This place is kind of like a hellhole, I guess, because it is remembered as like just this place of massacre, and they can't have peace. They cannot have any fucking peace and quiet. This is a place that's close to the Olympics. But why would you be holding the Olympics there, the question is? Well, the main reason is because anytime you get that little Olympic thing, you can convince your population to spend money to build shit. You know, it's like a bond. You know, it's like having wars, except for nobody's going to war. They're all going for prestige wars or something, right? Olympic bonds. And you're saying, look, we're going to build all these infrastructures and it's going to be good for this area, blah, blah. But really, it's just an excuse for everybody's fucking, you know, everybody's in the know to get like greasy handouts. Here you go, hey, brother-in-law. Like, just to give you an idea, this Olympics has cost $50 billion, or $52 billion, and probably still rising. $30 billion of that is estimated to be corruption. $30 billion to, yeah.
Where does it all go?
Well, it goes basically to, there's a few ways that, few things that happen. First, let's say I'm a company, and the Russian, contractors or whatever come to me and they're like, well, we want you to give us an estimate. And in that estimate, you need to give us 20% of all the money we give you because we're just going to fucking put that in our pocket. So that's 20%, okay, already is accounted for through this scheme. That's probably the majority of it. The rest is sort of like just, incompetence in terms of like, well, everybody's got to overcharge because many of the people who are in this job don't actually know how to do the things that they're accepting contracts for. But because they're the most corrupt and probably can negotiate the most amount of kickbacks, you estimate 20, but hey, maybe some guy can give you 22, right? It's a race to the bottom. So, yeah, so you're like, well, 52 billion? What the fuck? Now, I think the reason why Russia's thinking was that after the first Chechen war in the 1990s, when they destroyed 80% of the economy, well, essentially, they tried putting a little bit of money in it and nothing worked. So I think that maybe their solution was, why don't we throw billions and billions and billions of dollars at it? We'll get rich, but maybe we'll actually manage to build something because we don't want to embarrass ourselves in front of the world. But in the meantime, I mean, like, to just think about how terrifying it is that it's a race to the bottom. I'm like, is that how they're going to treat security there? Or do they not care if they're going to spend a couple more $1 billion on just surrounding the place with tanks? Like, I'm not exactly sure what everyone is expecting. I wouldn't even go. Do you know what I mean? Like, don't go to the Olympics. Watch it, because something's going to happen, but don't go there. You don't want to go to the Olympics. The Sochi Olympics, I mean, like, whatever crater is going to be left over at the end of that thing is going to be like, we're going to remember Sochi just the same way we remembered Stalingrad.
It's pretty apocalyptic.
All right. It is, but I got to tell you, there were fewer signs of trouble. And I'm forgetting what Olympics it was when there was a bunch of Israeli athletes that were kidnapped. They made a movie out of it with Munich. Yeah. That's right. They made a movie with Eric Bana in it about like seeking revenge for that shit because they'll bring people back. But when you have a dangerous combination of fundamentalism and nationalism, like I can only imagine, and an opportunity to slap Russia right in the face, because it's not really about anybody else except for they just want their motherfucking land. It's a familiar story, everybody? Well, they've been at it for, like 10 millennia. It's an old fight. It's an old motherfucking fight. I mean, whether or not they were doing for Zoroaster or fucking any of the other dead gods, it does not matter, right? It's all the same shit. You rinse, repeat. You know what I mean? Like, and this particular thing is sort of like, include lots of corruption, incompetence, religious and political fervor mixed together, and point all the cameras of the world at it.
How do you break that cycle?
Well, one, you do not hold Olympics in politically unstable fucking countries that barely hold together. It's the veneer of motherfucking civilization there. Putin is really in control. This is a great misery. But that's the thing that I worry about. I worry that some idiot really is going to do something that's kind of like a petty, people get hurt, and all of a sudden it's just more excuses to crush other innocent people's lives. It's like the crazy people are the ones that disproportionately represent everyone else who just wants to fucking not get droned. So what do you do? And I'm like, I wish that, the cure to everything was for everybody to fucking tone it down. But you can't tell a fundamentalist to tone it down, and there are real bad guys out there. You can't, just because almost everybody that you meet is a peaceful person doesn't mean that they can't be convinced of something that's murderously dangerous. I mean, that's what makes them so fucking terrifying in the first place, that they're sort of like so convinced that they're right about something that they're willing to sacrifice their life. And I really wanted to understand, what is the thinking of somebody who's like that? Well, a lot of times what you're going to find is confused young people who are in love maybe, or are frustrated or motivated by the political aspirations of other people that know how to manipulate dumb young people with no experience. People that have no future or that are very easily manipulated, especially if you're saying that your future is a paradise where you can have everything you want. Or that your future loved one that was also in the struggle is waiting for you there. And I'm like, well, sign me up, right? I mean, what do they have to lose? I think that we just need to be in a world where everybody has something to lose. You don't make you make it so that if someone really is at that desperate level, then that's the most dangerous thing. I mean, I remember a little funny story before we go and wrap up the show that kind of illustrates the fact that sometimes it can surprise you what can happen. I was in Calgary, and there was these little bunnies that were just running around, wild bunnies, because that's a thing over there. There's the hairs everywhere, and Carissa basically walked over to the bunny to just be like, "Oh, poor you," to pick it up, and all of a sudden it kind of leaped at her, and she freaked out. Freaked out because like it's attacking me. I'm like, yeah, even a cornered, cute ass bunny, when it has nothing to lose, will take on a giant. I mean, what is equivalent to a giant, right? Like you were, as far as it was concerned, a velociraptor that it barked at, and that's the technique of sort of like just going for the throat when you're in a situation of danger. Yeah, it's highly effective. It freaks out even a giant that could easily crush you with just like one little thing. And that's what these kinds of people want to do. They want to freak out giants.
So, I mean, here's a little question. How should the Olympic cities be selected? Because it sounds like it's just a question of which country is willing to spend the most money.
Yeah.
And, since the world's watching and the Olympics, do mean something to athletes and a lot of people, how should the Olympic cities be selected?
I don't know, because I think that generally
games, right? But it still matters. I mean, Russia. It seems like there's a lot going on in Russia right now, and maybe there would be another country with maybe a little more a model city that should be shown to the world.
I don't have a solution for the Olympics other than to stop it immediately before it becomes an uncontrollable monster that makes us all broke. I mean, okay, let me give you an example. Let's go to the Easter Islands. You remember those like statues with the heads? First of all, they're not heads, eh? Nobody bothered to dig them up. They're full-bodied.
Yeah, they're full bodies.
They're massive. They're nothing compared to what you think. We were impressed by just the heads. They're full-bodied, you fucking ignoramus. Or the ignorami? No, ignoramuses. Anyways, generally speaking, so these were displays of wealth of people, right? Like you had to, if you were you're the equivalent of a little fiefdom, and you have to show that you're better than everybody else, you're going to create these monstrosities that serve absolutely no purpose, and they display your wealth, and you basically destroy every single thing that you have around you that could have helped you survive. Now, I don't want to just suddenly say that the Olympic would be so big that we would destroy our environment or something that's fucking silly. But I mean, you can destroy economies. You don't think that Greece's problems were a fucking big kick in the pants because of how much they spent on the Olympics? I mean, it didn't have like the economic turnout they hoped, I bet. They were too small for just the amount that they spent. And that's kind of proportionally the problem that happens with everybody. Now they're just getting out of control. Now they're spendathons.
So how much did Russia spend again?
$52 billion.
52 billion.
That's a third of what you need to eradicate global poverty.
So 3 Olympic Games.
Yeah.
And we're talking Winter Olympic Games here.
Yeah, this is not as summer games are typically what's much more expensive. So this is the most expensive winter game by far, and it's going to my hope is that that's the last time that happens. But I wouldn't be surprised if just now people are like, well, you spent 51 billion. Watch what I can do with 60 billion. You're just like, oh god.
They set the bar pretty high, and the corruption bar pretty high too.
The corruption bar will be difficult to top. I would say that Mexico. If you can get an Olympic to Mexico, impressive corruption there, my friend. Impressive. There was one woman, she managed to embezzle, she was like head of a union of some kind, managed to embezzle $200 million all by herself. That's an impressive amount of money gone with like no one noticing, I guess. Or everyone, all the right people noticing. Wow. So that's corruption for you. And you know what? That's also our show for you. We're winding down now. Oh my God, is it already? The shows are 20 minutes now. We're capping that shit. 20-minute show. We're keeping it short because you know what? It turns out that that's the average view time that people were paying attention. After 20 minutes, I was losing you. So I'm like, we're just dividing it up into 20-minute segments. I hope you like them. This is episode what? What did we say? 2B?
Yeah, it's 2B, 2C.
Yeah.
Something like that.
There's another version of this.
Started at episode 0.
Yeah.
So.
There's another version of this where, the audio's not so great. I don't know if we'll lock it down or something. Maybe we'll just put it out there. Who cares?
We're still finding our
We're finding our voice. We're finding our thing. This is the first background configuration. So,
we appreciate
naturally. Definitely.
discussions.
Definitely
Very
lurkers.
cool. Very cool.
One of them definitely misuse from the NSA. Thank you for
Madame Use, although she probably doesn't
Madame
show up in
Use.
the YouTube statistics. I think she's tapped in somewhere
Good point.
down the.
Good
down
point.
the
No, she wants to. She wants us to know. She was watching. Think about it. Think about it. All right, we're gonna catch everybody next week. We're gonna be on a regular schedule. But if you want to chime in on when you think we should be regularly doing these 20-minute shows, then leave a comment right down below. Do that thing that I always tell people that I find annoying: leaving comments. Right down below, what time is the best time to do these, and then we're just gonna release them regularly. These 20-minute little goodness, and we're going to also make the audio version available for everybody. The Still Talking shows at jacobfortin.com, so visit the site for more details. And my name is Jacob Fortin, and I guess I'm done talking.